Hi guys, and welcome to The Thoughtful Advocate. I'm your host, Elizabeth Teo. If you already listened to the last episode, you know that I shared the early parts of my journey, the buried trauma, the emotional survival. I was living in survival mode and how things unraveled once I could no longer shove the pain down. That episode was truly heavy, but it was just the beginning. So today's story is even more personal. The story of the summer I almost did not survive. Now, I've shared this story a bit on my Instagram in the description or the caption, but this is the first time you can see my face. It's the story of my second chance at life. Now, before I dive in, I want to preface this episode contains sensitive themes, including suicide and depression. If you're not in a space to hear this right now, please take care of yourself first and come back when you're ready. And if you are in that space, I feel for you. You're not alone. I've been there, and there's hope at the end of the tunnel. I see you. So the summer after high school, no, this is not a Katy Perry song. This was 2014 was when I graduated. Everything that I had pushed down, my emotions, my thoughts, my beliefs, finally came to the surface and I exploded. I was never taught to deal with emotions. Growing up in a Chinese household, showing emotions was not okay. If you showed your emotions, you would be told to go wash your face. I remember my parents, in general, they could not look me in the eye when I'm crying. My dad would get mad when I start crying. He would actually hit us even more if we start crying. So I learned how to suck my own tears in, and I learned how to stop crying. And if I did have to cry, I would just go to my room and bawl my eyes out. I really learned how to hold all my emotions deep down. We were never allowed to speak about emotions because it was seen as weak, as a waste of time. My parents were the first generation to have immigrated from their own country. So my mom came from Hong Kong, my dad came from Malaysia, and they were in survival mode. They came here for a better life. They brought their family, they got jobs, they went to school, they went to university in Canada, found jobs, they found each other, and then they moved to the States, Washington specifically, which is near Seattle for people who don't know. It's funny because I always say, oh, I'm from Seattle, but I'm not really. I'm from Tacoma, which is near. So in many first generation Asian families, expressing emotions openly is a sign of weakness or vulnerability, which is not allowed. Parents who grew up in cultures, especially a lot of Asian cultures, where showing feelings was discouraged, you would get punished if you showed your feelings, and was often considered inappropriate. They tend to prioritize discipline, making sure that you do everything right, do everything perfectly, bring honor to your family, save face, and prioritize resilience, discipline, sacrifice over emotional expression. So this kind of upbringing, which I don't blame anyone for because it's passed down generationally, but there is a point where people need to take responsibility. So this emotional suppression and teachings of this, it teaches children with emotions, especially sadness, fear, anger, that they should be controlled or hidden to maintain harmony and peace, and so that you're not overburdening others. Because of this, many of us learn to repress our feelings from a very young age. We grew up thinking that being emotional means being weak or that our feelings aren't valid. So basically, we grew up thinking that being emotional is a sign of weakness or our feelings aren't valid, because we were told to shut them down. If you guys seen Vampire Diaries, when they turn off their humanity, it's not human. This in general makes it very hard to communicate our feelings or openly seek support when we're struggling, because we're like, if I'm really struggling right now, I don't want to be a burden to anyone else. I'm not going to ask for help, especially from family. That's why I thought it was so brave of my mom to ask her sisters for help, because at that time she didn't have a choice. Like, her supposed partner was out of commission, and the only person she could rely on, because we don't have family in Tacoma, most of her family actually lives in Ontario, so it showed her strength. I really looked up to her for doing that. But honestly, shoving the emotions down doesn't make it disappear. It just pushes it aside and helps it build up. Just like if you haven't cleaned your house in days, the dishes pile up, your emotions and feelings will also pile up. And it causes a lot of confusion, anxiety, depression later on, which explains a lot. Healing often begins with acknowledging and realizing what's wrong to begin with. I had just lost the only support I had because in middle school, my grandma moved to another country. I already lost my support system when she left. I had a really amazing high school experience. You can listen to the episode about it in my old podcast, the Zero Waste Conversation. We studied like animals at the zoo and did marine biology by the ocean. It was amazing. My friends became my support system in high school. I became really close with my group of friends and we spent a lot of time with each other, and every summer we have camp. We're super close and I could emotionally lean on them. Tell them my problems, and we shared so much together. We shared food, laughter, dumb jokes, and it was just so much fun. And the idea of losing them when my home life was not great was very scary for me. I was very scared of the unknown because I was going from a school of 400 people to University of Washington, which is like huge, probably thousands of students. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to make any friends. I just can't do this again. I really couldn't take another goodbye. The pain at that time came flooding in like a wave. I couldn't escape it. It was the fear of the unknown, the weight of my past, the hopelessness. It felt like I was drowning in my emotions. And I didn't have the tools to help me cope. I tried alcohol for the first time with prescription drugs that clearly said do not mix, which I thought I would die from, but luckily I didn't. I didn't want to feel anymore. I was devastated and I just hated my life at that point because I was like, it just got so good in so many ways. I had something to look forward to every time I left my house, but that was about to go away. And that was my first attempt. I tried again and again, but I couldn't bring myself to fully commit. And so thank God, because my whole future was waiting for me, and I think God knew that. And looking back at that moment, it was truly my second chance at life. So I remind myself every year on my birthday of this. You can see on my Instagram post at the Thoughtful Advocate that usually I say things I'm grateful, things I've learned, and also an homage to that year where I tried to take my own life. Because if I did, I wouldn't have realized how great or how good it can get. And it's still getting better. And this is just the beginning. So somehow in the middle of all that, my dad was employed for many years. I think he was going through his own shit. I think he had depression and anger management issues, a bunch of things. He did take me to see a psychiatrist, which I'm thankful for. It was my first time ever, and I remember sitting there frozen. I was literally mute, like I could not speak. And not surprising because before seeing the psychiatrist, my memory's a little blurry here, but I remember going to the general practitioner doctor and my dad sitting with me, with the doctor, saying something's wrong with me, tried to commit suicide. I think that's when my family doctor referred me to the psychiatrist, but I remember it being so scary because mental health is never talked about. And for my dad to sit there, to bring me to the doctor and sit with me, I guess showed he cared in some ways. Like I know he cared for me, it's just there's so much baggage and trauma. There was no way I could speak anyways because he was sitting right next to me, and how could I possibly open up when the person I feared the most was sitting right next to me? So even when I went to the psychiatrist by myself, I couldn't really speak. It took a couple sessions, and depression has swallowed me whole. Like I think I was gone. And I was really paranoid. I think I had some sort of psychosis because I generally believed someone was coming after me. Like every time I would see the helicopter fly over my room with lights at night, I would freak out. I'd be like, oh my God, they're coming after me. Because I felt like I did something wrong. Like after the suicide, taking pills, doing alcohol. Like I was always a goody two shoes. I never partied. I wasn't allowed to go out. So I felt like I killed someone, but I didn't. Just so many things were happening in my mind. And I couldn't tell anyone about it. I have journals actually where I would write my feelings down because I don't know what started that, but I have journals from high school where I write down my feelings, which would really help because there was no one I could tell besides my friends, but there's only so far I could dive into. And most of all, I hated myself at that point. I was like, why did I do this? I said words that my dad would say to me, moron, why would you do all this? And I was in a very dark place. My poor mom. So my mom was working full time because she was the only one bringing in income to the family at that point. My mom had finally had enough, understandably. And honestly, I think she's so brave for doing this. She endured so much in the marriage, so much trauma that she's still traumatized by it till this day. She finally made the brave decision to divorce my dad. Now, if you're Asian, or if you're in more conservative culture in general, you know that divorce is like a death sentence. People are really ashamed. You do not divorce your husband. You're supposed to stick it out. It doesn't matter what happened. So a lot of people look down on you if you're divorced. Divorce was not an option. It's funny because I think there's only 2 moments I can remember where I ever saw my parents like in love. And other than that, they would just sit in opposite ends of the house and never talk to each other. That's my most common memory of them. And yeah, the amount of trauma that was in the house is overflowing. So by October 19th, my brother's birthday, I literally flew on a plane for the first time by myself to her sister's place, which is in Ontario, Canada. They took me in, which I'm still so grateful for until this day. We lived with them for a couple years, and they're the nicest people we could ever meet, honestly. They're godsend. Each one of them are like amazing. They were truly wonderful women living together. My Aunt Melissa took me to piano lessons. That was the first thing that I felt helped me get out of a rut, learn something, or be distracted from what's going on in their life. Yeah, that was the first time I felt some joy at that point in my life. And I want to say I was 18 at that point. So I was taking piano lessons for the first time. There were other children who were way younger than me taking lessons too. And my piano teacher was so sweet. She was just like a random lady in the neighborhood, and it was fun. It was fun to see myself grow the confidence that I can have learning how to play and really help to build my confidence back up again. She also took me skiing, which is cool because she's actually older than my mom. She's, I think, the second oldest sister. The other one lives in Hong Kong or something. And she still goes skiing. And that's pretty cool because I guess for context, she was probably around her 50s. So it's pretty sick. Yeah, they didn't treat me like I was broken, so I was really grateful for that. My Aunt Janet helped me find my passions again. I love gardening too, so I would help her water the plants, spray soapy water for the bugs, and just spend time in nature. And I would watch Korean dramas with my Aunt Grace, and yeah, just talk, teach my aunts. Slowly, I started coming back to life. I was still mentally fried, don't get me wrong, but that was the first time in a very long time I felt safe in my own house. So I think that was something I needed. I needed an environment change, which my mom knew. I could start healing, even just a little at that point. And I wanted to say I downloaded Tinder in January or something because I took a gap year from university, so I wasn't doing anything, right? And I was like, maybe love can save me because I watched a million Korean dramas growing up with my grandma. My God. Anyways, yeah, it didn't, spoiler, at least not in the way I thought it would. But eventually I would be led. I downloaded it because I met Sean through Tinder. Yeah, I actually had to lie to people about it. I met the love of my life there, so I'm glad. We can go into a whole nother episode about that. But even with John, someone who loved me and saw me for who I am, it was really hard for me to still love myself. I had to find love within myself first, and I had to learn how to forgive myself in the end. That was the hardest part. I really had to trust myself. And when you grow up always doing what you're told, it's very hard to learn how to trust yourself. And I had to believe that I was worthy of living a great life, a good life. I had to understand that I was worthy of that. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you don't want to be here anymore because, yeah, let's face it, the world's pretty bleak right now, please hear this. Truly, you're not alone. The reason why I'm even recording these episodes, these stories, sharing my past traumas, because I know someone out there can relate. I know it's going to resonate with someone. Even if it's just one person, I know that if I share my story, I can help them at least know that they weren't alone. Because when I was going through my darkest moments, if I could know that one person out there could understand what I'm going through, then at least I know that I have someone. So there is hope. Even if you can't feel it yet, there is. I promise. That was summer I thought I wouldn't survive, but I did, and I'm beginning to thrive. Take this as your sign that you can too. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of my story. listening to the end of this episode. Thank you for choosing this day. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you think may need this, because they need to know that they're not alone. And you'll never know who it might save. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You deserve it. You deserve love. You're worth. Thank you for listening to The Thoughtful Advocate. As always, you can always leave a comment, write a review, and yeah, I also love listening to your comments. So my friend Tammy wanted to share things that she does that are sustainable. She said a lot of Asians reuse containers, like yogurt containers brought from stores to store leftovers. And yeah, my aunts had a bunch of yogurt containers that they just wash and reuse. And honestly, it stores so many things. And I remember bringing it to bulk barns, so they get like goodies and stuff. So that's awesome. Thanks, Tammy.
Okay, so today's sponsor is Kind Laundry. Just kidding, they're not really a sponsor, but I do have an affiliate code. Kind Laundry use natural ingredients, and it actually comes in these sheets. So much more useful than liquid laundry detergent, because that stuff gets messy. With Kind Laundry, you can bring this anywhere. It's literally in a box, pack in your suitcase, and it's that easy. You can get 10% off by using code ZeroWasteCute.